Coming to you from deep within the swamps of the southeastern United States, this is a paranormal podcast unlike one you've ever experienced before. This is the Westgate Paranormal Podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Westgate Paranormal Podcast. Today is Wednesday, September 12th, 2018, and we are just going to be doing some more paranormal chat tonight.
Yes.
Sound good?
Sure, why not?
Okay. So, just a couple of things right off the top here, just to kind of get the word out there a little bit more in case there are some of you who don't listen all the way through to the end of the podcast or whatever. Afterlifetours.net is opening up tours in St. Augustine, Florida, starting October the 3rd. We will be doing an 8 p.m. tour through the nation's oldest city and another one at the 10:30 mark. So 8 p.m., 10:30 p.m., starting Wednesday, October the 3rd. And it's going to be every day of the week except for Mondays and Tuesdays is how we have it scheduled right now. So you can go ahead and find out more info on either their Savannah, Georgia tour or the one that I'll be doing in St. Augustine, Florida, if you go online to afterlifetours.net. It's a very unique tour, unlike any other that they give in the city. The way we present our tours is that we actually have investigated and researched the actual history of each location we go to. So on the tour, I actually take you to each place, show you actual evidence at every place that we go. That we've gained from our investigations, whether they be EVPs or videos or pictures or a combination. Plus, it's a fun walking tour in the nation's oldest city, and you'll learn a lot. Because I throw in history with everything too. So.
Yeah, and I've actually been on your tour, the one that you currently do, and I have no problem giving you a lot of shit for... You know, if it sucks, I'll tell you.
Yes.
But he's actually an amazing tour guide.
Well, thank you very much. I am not a very personable person, I guess you got. Well, no, that doesn't sound right. I'm somewhat antisocial.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, but when it comes to history, the paranormal, and my tours, you would never know that. So I guess there's a little bit that comes out in me that... is unlike if you just met me on the street and I just sort of nod my head because I'm not really, even except for this podcast, for things we're actually talking about, I'm not like sort of a casual chit chatter kind of guy, really.
No. Like most people think you hate them when you meet them the first time.
Well, I don't, I promise. Any of y'all who think that, or any of y'all who may think that in the future, I don't hate you right off the bat. But if I do, I'll let you know.
It's true. But
that's very rare. So,
Anywho,
okay.
So I do have a question from an actual listener. She actually was wanting to know where we got Westgate Paranormal from.
That is an interesting sort of story, I guess you can say. When I think of Westgate, I think Leela Wendell sort of pointed it out the best when she had the Necromantic Museum in New Orleans, that she referred to the Westgate as well, and her explanation, as my feelings about it, kind of coincide with that. When you think of the sort of different directions, whether it be just their meaning as far as the seasons go, or more in-depth the meaning as far as like with the Native Americans and with other belief systems. The first thing that comes to mind really is the East is the place of new beginnings, where the sun rises, that sort of thing.
Right.
And traditionally a lot of Christian graves and such, a lot of times the bodies are all oriented with their feet to the east, so that when they're resurrected, they face certain direction.
Interesting.
Or something along those lines. Maybe it's they face to the west because it's a new beginning. I don't know. So anyway, the west I think of as basically the opposite of the east. It's not the place necessarily where the sun rises, but it's the place where the sun sets. Traditionally, it's also been associated with the constellation Orion the Hunter. It's a large constellation that's normally in the west in the latter times of the year, so it goes into the seasons as well as fall and winter, and things start to pass away.
Right.
So that's what the Western Gate is to me. It's my way of looking at it as passing into the unknown or into the afterlife. So
Nice.
it's not the place of births, but the place of deaths. So considering this is what we do with the paranormal, I've always thought it appropriate that it's the West Gate.
Yeah, I like it. I dig it. I hope that answers that question.
Yes. I know we get that question from time to time, and I know I get kind of wordy with it, but basically that's what it comes down to. But it's got a lot of meaning to me in that respect, so I don't think I'm getting wordy.
No, I think you couldn't just be like, the sun
sets in the west.
Yeah, rises in the east and it sets in the west, and there
could.
you go, we're West Gate. So, having a little bit more in depth definitely helps quite a bit.
You know how I over-explain sometimes. So
No.
So we've been kind of looking around at some different ideas and actually doing a little bit more in-depth research for a couple upcoming podcasts, and so that's why we kind of decided to keep this basically as just a casual chat, because we want to have as many sources and things together for our upcoming podcast. You want to talk about one of them because it's, I know, something that you're really wanting to focus on, and to me it's just creepy.
So I have actually started learning Duolingo and taking a Spanish course just to be able to further study this. That's how a little nutty I've gotten about this. But
when we research.
Yeah. When I get interested in something, I go down that rabbit hole for a few weeks. But we are looking at doing a podcast on duendes. It comes from Central South America culture. I'm not going to go too in depth in it because I don't want to, really cover the podcast.
But that's just one of the things.
Yeah, we're looking at doing one on duendes, and it's you guys can have a little fun looking up some YouTube videos, and there's a lot of hoaxes out there.
Yeah, but, as always.
But it's there are a few that you run across that definitely make your skin crawl. So that's definitely something that I've been researching so much that I've decided to learn a new language in order to do it. I'm crazy if you have not picked up on that yet.
But that just makes it even cooler, because when you're doing that, you're opening up a whole new door for new learning experiences.
Yeah, I'm all about the learnings.
Yeah, most definitely.
I think that we are actually thinking about doing an episode on maybe Rasputin, since we did one on Marie Laveau, do some more historical figures that are surrounded by the paranormal.
Yes, I would love to do one on Rasputin. He is sort of I don't want to say an idol, but he's a very intriguing person to me, and just a lot of the misconceptions around him and just his life, and especially how he died and stuff. It's always fascinated me.
And I feel like he gets the same reaction. There's no middle ground with him. It's like Marie Laveau. You either why do you like this person, or I can't believe it, that's awesome that you like this person.
Exactly.
There's no middle ground with him.
I've got a large portrait of Rasputin on my left upper arm. That whole whatever area you call it.
It would be your upper arm.
Okay,
yeah.
My upper arm.
That's and it's a beautiful portrait done here locally in Jacksonville.
Yes, very, very nicely done. And a lot of the times when I'm doing my tours, living here in the armpit of the U.S. of Florida, it gets very hot. So oftentimes you will see me walking around sleeveless when I'm doing my tours. Yeah. What?
I don't think armpit is the correct thing.
That's how I'm going to put it.
We're the penis of the United States, and
the wang of the U.S.
During the summer, we are the wang of a teenage boy playing soccer.
Yuck. So anyway, yes. So I get a lot of comments, questions, compliments, and strange faces at my Rasputin tattoo.
And then sometimes people think it's a self-portrait.
Yeah. So is that supposed to be you? Or is that Willie Nelson? Or just, you know.
Yeah, Willie Nelson.
I say, no, it's Rasputin. They're like, who?
Yes.
So
yeah, we would definitely like to cover him. So for the people that are out there going, who?
Exactly.
We will give you all that information.
Yeah, there's been a lot of stuff done about him. So I'm hoping to kind of take a more unique personal approach to it instead of like the movies have done.
Yeah.
So not that they're bad.
Because
awesome.
Alan Rickman plays an
Exactly.
amazing Rasputin if you ever get a chance to watch that movie.
So what else?
I think a couple people were kind of interested in not necessarily our backstory, but some of the stuff that goes on in our house, because we have said that things go bump in the house
in the
quite
day,
a bit.
in the night, in the afternoon. They go bump all the time.
So
yeah.
Before we actually get into the things that actually happened in this house, the first time we actually investigated this house, meaning we set up a recorder, I had ulterior motives as to why I wanted the recorder set up, because at the time my husband and I were not married, and he didn't believe that he snored.
Not that loud.
So
For sure.
we set up the recorder in the very front of the house, and we sleep in the very back of the house. So there's no way, his snoring should have not interfered with our recording, but it did the whole night. And he had no idea what the noise was and had me listen to it. And I finally got to tell him, that's you. So that's my fun story about, like, investigating the house the first time. But you actually have a lot of things that have happened in here with you. And I have too, but you've heard more interesting things.
Well, one of the very first things when I moved in here that I thought was really interesting, because it wasn't something that like really scared me or caught me off guard, so to speak. The very, very first time it happened, because it sounded like somebody was in the hallway. I was still back in the back bedroom with the door shut, and we have a sort of an L-shaped hallway, and I heard somebody walking down the hallway, coming around the corner and going to the back bedrooms, and it sounded like the door opening and closing almost. And so at first I was like, is there, my first thought is somebody's in the house. But after that, I realized that it was a residual haunting that just happened almost every morning there for a long time. Somebody walking down the hall to the very back of the hall and opening one of those back bedroom doors.
Which I was completely used to all of this, and I just didn't say anything.
Well, I'm used to being, every house that I've lived in has always had something going on happening in it. So I guess coming into this place, it's something totally different like that,
Yeah.
like experiencing it here. So,
but you feel like you've had a Duendes type experience in this house.
man, I don't even know how to explain it. Yes. This was before I honestly had ever heard of Duendes. This happened quite a bit there for a while. 3 years ago or something like that. It happened 4 or 5 times. I don't know how to explain it. We have hardwood floors. At the time, we still had carpeting on all the floors, right?
So maybe it was about 5 years ago, yeah.
And I'm sitting in the very front room of the house, and it sounded like something was running across the floor, literally from one end of our house to the other, but not running on the floor. it sounded literally and felt, you could feel the thump, thump, thump. It felt like it was running upside down on the bottom of the floor, which really couldn't do it anyway because the stringers under our house for this floor, it would be bump, bump, trying to jump over each one, upside down, of course.
Right.
So, I don't know. I just thought it was very strange.
Yeah. And I know, because this house was my grandparents', so every once in a while I'll get a smell of Old Spice in here. We definitely have both our dog that passed and our cat that passed. They definitely come around quite a bit. They have no problem jumping on the back bed because our current dogs are not allowed in the bedroom.
Right.
So, we'll feel a bump or a knock on the bed, or sometimes we'll feel Milo, the cat, laying between us.
Yeah, or jumping on the foot of the bed, too, sometimes.
Yeah.
A few nights ago, even, I felt... I had woken up in the middle of the night, and I felt like something was either pulling on the comforter over my feet, like pulling it towards the foot of the bed, or it was trying to uncover my feet, like one of the two, like something either pulling it down or pushing up underneath it.
Okay, that's a new one. That one creeps me out. I don't like that one.
Yeah, I didn't even think about it till just now when you were saying that.
Well, thanks. You probably could have kept that one to yourself.
Well, now you know, and you know what they say about knowing.
Well, I mean, you know how much you hate when I wake up in the middle of the night because I always scream about people in the corner. Scream.
Like, I hope neighbors don't hear us type screams.
Yeah. I've always had that, though. Like, everywhere I've lived, and I've lived in Florida, I've lived in North Carolina, I've lived in Texas, I've even lived in Germany. Every place that I've been, I've always woken up thinking or seeing a shadowy figure in the corner.
Yeah.
And it's always by the door leading out of the bedroom.
Yeah.
Always. No matter what house I'm in.
Which is just creepy. Like, because I saw stuff when I was a kid. I talked about in another podcast too, especially at my grandmother's house. But it was never the way you describe how you see yours.
Yeah.
I would see shadow figures and stuff, but not something standing there watching me. Now, my grandma, on the other hand, she would see things at the foot of the bed, or she would see things standing in the hallway looking into the bedroom, things like that. Because she told me about it all the time, which just made me even more scared.
I haven't had anything come toward me except for what we talked about on our aliens episode.
Yeah.
So if you want to hear that story, if you haven't listened to that one, then feel free to go back. I'm not going to explain it all over again.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting episode. Just about aliens. And speaking of aliens, anybody who's seen Sir No Face,
man.
He's coming out with a new one. Was it on pre-sale or something like that right now?
Yeah, it's pre-order. He's only doing about 1,000 copies, I think I read.
Yeah. So we're really excited about that. That's Two-Face the Gray is, I think, what it's called. So
yeah, that one I'm so freaking excited about. I really hope that he comes and does a viewing of it in St. Augustine like he did with Sir No Face.
Oh, yes. That would be awesome. Because their amphitheater, that's where they did it with that one too, right? Was the amphitheater?
Yeah.
Which... I don't know. The first time I went to the amphitheater, I was like, all right, big outdoor open venue, not going to be that great. But it was probably one of the best setups for a concert.
Oh, yeah.
Period.
Oh, yeah,
because
absolutely.
you can wander all the way up to the stage if you want. And the sound is, in my opinion, better than being in an inside venue with stuff like that. So,
I think it's just because St. Augustine is just cool.
Yes, it could be it. It is naturally acoustically set up for such coolness in their amphitheater.
So that's actually something that has been bothering me because we watch a lot of the paranormal shows, which we love, but when it comes to one place that all of them go, they always have the wrong story. which is
yes.
which is where you come in.
Yes.
Because, like we say, we do a lot of investigation. We do a lot of research whenever, we go to talk about something, because we don't want to give you guys bad information.
Right.
So, talk about that for a second.
There is a story associated with the Castillo de San Marcos, which is the originally Spanish-built fort in St. Augustine. They started building in 1672 and didn't complete it till about 23 years later. And there's a story of a room that is in the fort that I go in detail with on my tour for anybody who's down here doing my tours, that the room is referred to as the powder room. They originally built it, the Spanish originally built it to store munitions and gunpowder and stuff in, and then realized, depending on which history you kind of read how it's described, it was mainly due to the moisture content, or the soundness of the area itself, because it's not a very big room. And it was basically used as a trash room by the Spanish when they slaughtered cattle and stuff like that. When they were holed up in the fort, they just threw it all in this little arch-roofed sort of room.
It's
in
not
the
very
wall.
big.
No, it's not big at all. In fact, to get into the room, you almost have to get down on your hands and knees. You basically, there's a little hand railing on the floor, and you bend down through this little tiny opening in the side of the room. So one of the stories that I think just about every show that I've seen where they've gone there, which there's not very many shows, it's the Castillo's owned and operated by the National Park Service. So access for certain things is a lot more restrictive than just a privately owned, building or location. So on most of the shows that I've seen, when they go to the Castillo, they always talk about this powder room and how it was used as either a dungeon or a torture room, or the most notable story in St. Augustine involves a Spanish colonel who was in charge of the fort at the time, and his wife Dolores, and then the sort of twisted affair that the colonel's wife had with a captain that was sent there. And there's a couple different versions of stories. One of them is he started noticing the scent of orange blossoms sort of coming off of the captain. And his wife was very well known locally for always smelling like orange blossoms, because she bathed in them and made perfume out of them and such. And then so when he realized that his wife and this captain were in the midst of an affair, he had them both arrested, taken into the powder room, and shackled, standing up on the walls facing each other, and then bricked the opening over.
Right.
And then that story basically says that they were left to die. It was kind of kept a secret, and it wasn't until, I want to say, like 40 years later in most stories, that the British actually discovered that room by accident, which the way the story is actually told is not really possible, because it's a brick room, and the British apparently were moving a cannon or something and broke through part of the ceiling is one story. They broke through part of the brick where the doorway is another story. But needless to say, it's not true that those people were shackled in there and left to die and bricked over and all that. Basically what it is it was a waste room where the bones and the remnants were thrown. And then later on in 1702, when the British attacked St. Augustine, there were several men who were actually injured, killed, and two of them severely mutilated when they basically overloaded a 16-pound cannon. And when they shot the cannon, trying to take out as many of the British troops that came onto land, the cannon exploded, and it blew the arm off of one soldier and the leg off another. So those body parts were also thrown in the powder room. And then later it was bricked over, and yes, at some point much later on, it was accidentally found and there were bones in it, including
Right.
human bones, but
Right.
not people shackled to the wall.
Right.
So that's kind of the truth versus the history. And from my understanding, that story kind of got started by either a Dawson tour guide or a park ranger tour guide or something like this several decades ago.
Wasn't it like in the 60s or 70s?
That's what I'm thinking is like 1965, about that time. And so somehow that story came up. I apologize for our dog barking in the background. She's on high alert tonight.
Yeah.
So, yes, somebody made up that story back apparently in the 60s, I think, and it has kind of become accepted as local fact. And hopefully she'll calm down now. We said this would be a casual chat.
Yeah,
so
that is true.
you get our full experience.
Yeah, exactly.
Every little sound our dog's barking at.
You get the insanity. But yeah, I don't know why, like, once you told me that story, now every single time I see an episode with that, I, like, scream at the TV and I'm like, I should write them. And it's just like, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's a fun story, but it's just, that's what it is. It's just a story. It's a legend.
Yeah, it is a local legend. And that's the thing, too, with, I guess, going to a place to do an investigation or research or something like that. You talk to a lot of the local people, even people that grew up there, because this legend in particular goes back to at least the 60s that I know of.
Right, so to them it
So,
actually is real,
yeah.
but, you know, nobody's actually taken the time to really look into it.
Right. And, you know, it's historic. It is on record, you know, about the soldiers that were injured, killed, and mutilated during that particular incident. So it's something that happened. It's something that is in the history books. It's in the research library. They talk about it. I think it was printed in a paper and stuff. So because that cannon, to my knowledge, is also the cannon that's on display in the fort, the one that actually exploded, or that type of cannon, at least a 16-pound cannon they called it. So
Interesting. Yeah, I kind of wanted you to cover it because it's been nagging at me.
And see, that's another thing I do on my tours too, that I'll tell the local stories, I'll tell the legends and stuff, and then I'll tell the fact behind that, like, you know, if it's complete made up or if there's parts of it that are true that have been embellished to the point to where, no, you know, this is what really happened. So
Right.
that's also not what anybody else really does to that extent on other tours too. So I try to focus on that a lot to say, well, this is the story and this is the truth.
Right. And he doesn't take the fun out of it.
Right. I try not to. I don't know. So, what about some of your other experiences here?
I mean, it's just the normal, like, opening and shutting of the cabinets in the kitchen. That's pretty normal. I think stuff that has happened here recently, it's because of things that you've brought home.
Yeah.
But
not physical items, but
Right.
like things that are following me home, I guess
Right.
you could say.
But, you know, I definitely think a couple of them have been negative, but once you actually, like, go, you're not welcome here, like, you don't freak out or anything, but
Right.
you just state, you know, I know that you're here, you can go ahead and leave because you're not welcome, and
Right.
it pretty much stops. And if it doesn't, then, I mean, we've got bundles of sage for days.
Yeah. That's true. And that kind of brings up an interesting point too. Somebody on my tour recently was asking me that idea of attachments, and, you know, if you get involved with this, are things going to start happening in your house and that sort of thing. And this is usually kind of what I tell people involving that if you are knowingly going into places that are known to be haunted, whether it be just casually because that's something that you think's cool and you go to historic areas like that, or if you're doing it as part of investigations or investigating those areas. Once you start going to places that are known to have activity, especially if you're doing them on a regular basis, that's why you're going there. Then yeah, things are going to eventually start happening at your house. Things are going to follow you home, so to speak.
Right. That's actually why when I go into a place that I know I knock 3 times before I walk in.
Right.
And when I leave, I knock 3 times before I exit.
Right.
And it kind of shuts it down.
Yeah, you're showing respect to whatever's there, letting them know you're there and letting them know you're leaving and stuff too.
It's just a little thing that I do. It's just me personally. I know a lot of people do a lot of other things. Some people pray before they go in, and, everybody's got their little thing. But my thing is, I show my respect, entering, and I hope that they show respect as I exit,
right. And unless something is targeting you, I guess, so to speak, from a location, that they are a malevolent entity that for some reason has put their sights on you.
Right.
Then usually, when things follow you home like that, it's there's a lot of different theories. What I kind of like to think of it as is they're following you because they see something in you that resonates with their spirit.
Right, absolutely.
Whether it be good or bad, they may see a sadness deep inside you that
they can attach themselves to.
Exactly. So they'll come home because, they're attracted to you, so to speak, in that way. Sort of on a ethereal spirit level. And then once you kind of acknowledge that they're there, if things start happening or whatever in your house, just say, yeah, I know you're here. I'm not bothered by you or whatever.
Right.
And, and then you basically just ignore it from that point on. And it's not something that stays in your house, is what I'm saying.
And I definitely, when I first started to really realize that I was sensitive to things like that, it used to scare the crap out of me if something bad would happen, and I'd freak out, and it just kept happening. And that's the thing, it's almost like a bully. Like, once you show fear, it's like attack mode.
Yep, they want your attention for one reason or another, and that's why they're hanging around you.
Right, and as I've gotten older and I've started paying attention to things and trying to work on, my sensitivities or whatever, things like that don't scare me as much. It's one of those, like, if you look somebody in the eye, they're less likely to come at you type thing.
Right.
So it's the same situation. And you can kind of feel it. You feel it in the air. You feel the negativity. And sometimes if you don't feel the negativity in the air, you actually start to emotionally change.
Right. You get that empathic connection.
Right. So if you start to feel that, then just go, all right, I know you're here, so you can just go ahead and get, you're not welcome.
Right.
And you shut it down, and generally they get out,
Yeah, I think they hear things that follow us or follow me home and interact. I think they kind of look at it as like, wow, these people are really boring, so that's why they leave.
Oh yeah, definitely. Oh yeah.
Unless we're sitting here doing our mindless commentary on whatever show we're watching on the Cooking Network or something.
Yeah.
Or something like that. We're playing video games.
Yeah, we're a lot funnier when we don't have to hold microphones.
Yeah.
But so with that whole thing of bringing things home, Aaron Goodwin brought up an excellent thing, which I'm in complete agreement with, is if something is given to me, I generally don't take it unless I know the person.
Right.
And I have to know them very well.
Right.
And another thing is, I do not let people I don't know touch me. Ever. And a lot of times I don't let people that know me touch me.
Yeah.
It's just a big thing with me with energies. So I know how I feel about that. You're not so much. You seem to want to go pick up every creepy thing that you can find.
I was wondering where you're going with that. Yes.
So where I feel very protective of myself, Eric will, I mean, I'm serious. If he wanted to bring home a prosthetic leg that was behind a firehouse. Like,
in an alleyway behind a building downtown in one of the slummiest areas of downtown.
Yeah, why? Why you have
How
to?
How often do you find a prosthetic leg thrown behind a building? Exactly. See?
But why do you want it?
Because how often do you find a prosthetic leg? That's a story. Hey, look, I got this downtown. I don't know. It could have been used in a murder. It could have been a defense weapon. Or maybe somebody just ran out of his leg.
Who are you going to tell that to? No one comes to this house.
Well,
you would just tell me over and over, and I'd throw it out in the trash.
I would at least have the story, and that's what counts.
You have the story. That's your story. You never had to bring it home. See?
Well, you know.
What other crazy crap have you tried to bring home?
I don't know I brought anything crazy home. What do you mean? I have a collection of animal parts, and by that I mean bones. I guess that sounded weird. Animal bones. Finding in the woods, stuff like that. And when I'd find, like a snake skeleton, I would keep it.
I don't find that weird.
Okay.
Because I like bones too. But I'm sure half of the listeners are probably like throwing up in a bucket by now.
If y'all only knew, I've got buckets of chicken feet and gator teeth. You name it, I've got all sorts of weird stuff.
I think I have a bag full of skunk heads.
Yes, the skulls.
Yeah.
Skunk skulls, yes.
Yeah, that I do have. That I actually do for gifts.
Yeah.
For people who enjoy things. Like my friend Carrie Ann. We made her that coffin,
the coffin with
the
skunk skull. Yeah, that was a cool
if
one.
I truly love you, I give you dead things. I'm kind of like a cat.
Bringing in squirrels and lizards.
Yeah, I will bring you dead things if I love you.
And see, that I think kind of goes, it plays into what we do. I mean, in my view of it, a lot of people who are into at least the investigative side of the paranormal also tend to have strange collections.
They're into the
interests.
oddities. Yeah. The more obscure the oddity. Like, I really do have an obsession with really bad taxidermy.
Yeah.
Like, I want to fill this house or a house. It could be somebody else's house at this point, full of really bad taxidermy. So if anybody wants to get me a Utah werewolf, you are more than welcome to. If you don't know what a Utah werewolf is, please do yourself a favor and look it up.
Yes. Google is your friend.
It is the best piece of taxidermy you will ever see in your life. You're welcome.
Yeah, it's crazy. So, but see, and that kind of, that brings in like our strange sort of dark humor side and our interest in like dead things all together in a sense too, with bad taxidermy like that,
Yeah.
Because it's sort of a twisted humor, people who were into it.
Yeah, I don't want the good stuff. That stuff can stay in a collector's house. I really want like a squirrel on a pogo stick or a guinea pig in a Pope costume. That's where it's at, man.
I want a guinea pig with a saddle on it and a squirrel dressed like a cowboy riding it, smoking a little cigar like Clint Eastwood used to smoke.
That would be awesome.
It'd have to be a big guinea pig and a small squirrel. Well, it could be a chipmunk, I guess. Yeah, a chipmunk would probably work better.
What about a hamster on a guinea pig?
That would work. Yeah. That would actually work better than a squirrel.
I feel like we're going way too far with this.
Okay, anyway. So how did we even get to that wormhole?
I no.
I think it was people who investigate the paranormal and strange things they collect. Oh, because you said I like to pick up everything. There we go.
That's right.
That's where the tangent started. Because I like to collect strange things that I find on the street.
He wants to bring dolls home, and I don't like. I fucking hate dolls. Oh,
dolls
my
are
God.
one of the top things that have attachments sort of with them. They're sort of
well,
like
and
statues.
I understand why, because like most little girls love those things and they want those things and they carry them with them everywhere, and a lot of love and a lot of emotion and a lot of feelings go into it, and so therefore it almost becomes a tulpa.
Yeah, they've created it by their own sort of thought forms, putting this energy and stuff.
But when I got them, my mom made me put them up on the dresser, all right?
Uh-huh.
And every night I would turn those sons of bitches around so that they weren't fucking looking at me.
So they weren't like the clown and Poltergeist with the little boy?
Yes, I cannot tell you. I hate them. Oh, but I love when people do creepy shit with them, like turn them into lights or planters.
Yes.
That I am all for. But actual freaking porcelain dolls, no, I'm out. They're horrible. Horrible.
I think they're cool.
Yeah, because you try to bring them home.
Because they're cool.
No, they're not.
And they are a source of historic relevancy.
Awesome. Not in this house. Never. I have this fear that people are going to give me those things now.
So
God,
then,
I hope not.
I
will
get them by proxy?
I will beat you with them. I will tell you that right now.
Well, that brings up kind of an interesting point too. You were talking about like feeding energies. Like like a little girl with her doll, that's when she's the saddest, that's who she cries to. When she's the happiest, that's who she's playing with, type of thing. There's lots of energies that go into that.
And I would dare to go as far as to say the energy that goes into it depends on the household that it's in. Because if it comes from a very happy child with a happy life, it's going to have positive energy. And so therefore, when passed down or bought at a garage sale or an estate sale or something like that, you don't ever really feel anything because it's just positive. It's just light.
Right.
But imagine a doll coming from, a household from a horrible situation.
Right. Yeah. Abusive or violent.
Right. God forbid. Or something happened in the home to the kid and the whole family, things like that. I think that is a lot where the negative energy is definitely fed into it more than just, a child with a doll that cries about a boy or, cries because they bumped their knee.
Stuff.
Right. I don't think that that's it, but definitely
traumatic.
All of those things go into the positivity of the doll.
Right.
Where I feel as though that's where the negative dolls come from.
Yeah.
And that's why I don't antique stores. There's a reason why those dolls are still in those stores and why no one wanted them. I'm telling you, that's why when we go into those antique stores and you're like, look at these dolls, I'm like, no, fuck that.
I think it makes a good sort of correlation again with, I guess, the origins of a lot of those ideas and why they could be creepy in themselves. Because if you think back along the lines of like magical practices, sympathetic magic, it was always based on making sort of a clay figure to represent someone, all the way down to like using like what we would think of as the stereotypical like voodoo doll, how they're portrayed, and to actually having statues that are basically, say, idols or something that you use in a ritual that, as being given offerings and stuff. So dolls kind of tie into that. They kind of, it's like
a lot more than I actually thought. Now that you say that,
So they can, just like a statue or just like a figure or a doll or something, they can be imbued with their own sort of life force.
It's kind of like the ones, what is it, in Thailand, where they, like, hand make each
yes.
doll, and, like, you're supposed to, like, when you bring it back, you're supposed to give it its own plane seat, and it's supposed to be treated just like a child would.
They're called spirit dolls, and they're handcrafted, lifelike children dolls, like super realistic.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And yeah, a few years ago, because of this immense popularity in Thailand, the airlines over there actually made it so those spirit dolls could have their own seat, on the plane and everything else, because they're treated exactly like children. It's sort of like, what was that movie we saw? Was it The Boy?
Oh, yeah.
It's that sort of idea. Like, this was a doll because it was meant to sort of replace their dead kid, and the doll really had its own life. It would move, and it would do, malicious things in the house and stuff like that to the person who was supposed to be taking care of it while their parents were gone.
Right. If I swear to God, if I ever get on a plane and someone has one of those dolls next to me, I'm going to lose it. I would have to change seats. It always, throughout, even like thinking back, like old shows and stuff, it always revolves around this sort of Pinocchio aspect, like a doll getting its own life. Ugh.
Like Twilight Zone has had episodes on it. There was a whole movie with Anthony Hopkins.
Chucky,
yeah. But it was always something like that. It started out, I think, more like ventriloquist figures more than anything else. They came to life. They actually were doing their own show, and that's what the movie Magic with Anthony Hopkins is about. That these murders are happening. Basically, this is an old movie. These murders are happening, and it actually all goes back to his ventriloquist figure.
Yeah.
So, and whether that's like an aspect that they're showing in some of these shows where the person's really just crazy, so to speak, and they think the doll is alive, to the shows where the doll, the ventriloquist figure, is actually alive and is out to, like, kill people or something,
I hate this conversation so much. I am so uncomfortable right now. But yet I collect those Funko Pop characters.
That's true.
They don't bother me.
They're very undoll-like, though.
Yeah.
Is that a word?
They're bobbleheads.
Yeah. And they're all still boxed and everything, too. So
all 5 million of them.
Yeah. An entire room and then overflow.
Oh, that is one thing. My little minis, I recently knocked over the minis, but I actually have had them just randomly push forward and hit the glass, because they're in a glass case. So I've had, like, 1 or 2 happen.
Yeah, it happened, 2-3 weeks ago?
Yeah.
When I was coming through the folding French doors, whatever they're called, that I was like, because Daisy, the dog that was barking earlier in this podcast, that was one of the little noises, and she freaked out, and I was like, it's just one of those figures moving inside the glass, tapping on the glass, basically.
That's the other thing, is the French doors. We have little latch hooks on them.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
And we will hear them unlatch and then relatch on the other side.
Yep.
And then I've actually had it where they've been latched on both sides.
Yeah.
Before.
When we made them, we did it so you could kind of put your finger in the opening where the latch hooks are, and there's one on each side of the door. So depending on what side you're on is the side you're locking. And then you can easily reach through if somebody had locked the other side and unlock that.
Thank God we were smart enough to do that, because I can't tell you how many times we would have been stuck on one side or the other and not been able to. I mean, it's not a strong, like,
right. It's just
French
basically
door
to keep the animals on this side of the house, because they don't try to push through it or anything.
But yeah. So.
That was well planned on
yeah,
our part.
Yeah.
Yes.
Trying to think. I don't know if there's anything else that really happens. I mean, we have like random TV equipment turn on and off, but I feel like that's pretty normal.
Yeah, that's something that you hear happening in a lot of houses.
And I think a lot of it's
things.
It's electricity, or how everybody's got 10,000 remotes and you only use one. So I feel like that's got a lot to do with it too.
And we did actually, with the TV we have here in the living room, we did actually have an issue with it turning itself off and on for a while.
Oh yeah.
And turning the channels on its own and stuff like that. And what it actually ended up being, it's a flat screen TV, and apparently when they were putting it together, some dust got inside of it, and so they're not like buttons, they're just the contact buttons where you just barely touch them, and that's what was going on. A piece of dust was actually shorting out some of the buttons inside, and it made it seem like the TV was possessed. So a technician came out and just replaced the cover plate with a new controller on it, and it's been fine ever since.
See, like there are a lot of things that people want to jump to being paranormal, and they're just not. You know?
Yeah, you really have to. I don't want to say be a skeptic, but you want to try to find a logical explanation for something instead of just instantly thinking something's paranormal.
Right.
Because oftentimes it's not, and that's kind of the whole point of paranormal investigations, is to debunk just as much as you can prove, really, because that's what we're ultimately looking for, is to try to weed out any possible natural things that's occurring, and that focuses more on the supernatural aspects of it, and that's the actual proof that we're looking for.
The only thing that I will not investigate further in this house is the running under the house. I don't give a shit.
Yeah,
I'm not getting under the house to try to debunk that one.
Yeah, we have a pretty decent sized crawl space under our house.
Snakes.
So the fact is that if something was even running along the ground, they still would not be their back hitting the underside of the house unless it was a small bear or something. So, and I don't think
that'd be awesome.
A bear would have been running that fast, because you could hear like the tap 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 of the toenails on the underside of the floor, and it was not like a slow progression. It went from one side to the other side of the house, and you could hear it all the way through, and it did it fast, like it was running full speed upside down somehow.
That one is not cool.
That one, yeah. I have yet to understand that. We don't have animals really ever getting under our house of any kind, so nope. Just the snakes.
Ugh. Ugh. Yeah.
So another thing that was happening here too, going back to when you were talking about setting up the recorder, is that we were hearing the cabinet doors in the kitchen open and close. Like we hear that during the daytime too. We can be sitting here and we'll hear just throughout the day, every once in a while, it sounds like a cabinet door opens and then closes again. We can be standing right there as it's happening, hearing it, but we're not seeing anything. So
yeah, I've had it where I've been facing the opposite way and had a cabinet open.
Yeah.
Like, that's pretty normal. Like, a cabinet that I didn't previously open,
right.
Hasn't been opened in a long time, and they'll just pop open.
They'll just pop open. But when we're hearing the noise, we're not seeing a cabinet actually even open and close. We're just hearing the sound of it. So it's like a residual haunting, basically. It just does it. But when we were recording, we were hearing that, and we also heard a whistling, like somebody was in the kitchen.
Right, which my grandfather always whistled.
Right.
All the time. It's the same with the walking up and down the halls. That's my grandfather. I definitely feel like he's definitely in this house from time to time.
Which proves a good point that people talk about, well, why is this spirit haunting this place? They didn't die there, or something
right.
like that. If they were that comfortable for that long in life in that spot, it would only go to reason that they're just still hanging around because they were always comfortable being here.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And neither one of my grandparents passed away in this house. So
right.
That's also the point, that you were trying to say. It's just I don't know. I enjoy it. I actually like when I can smell the Old Spice, or if I
Right.
hear a whistle, or things like that.
Very reassuring.
Yeah, I like it. It has actually never bothered me, and it was extremely active when I first moved in this home. Because I lived here alone, it actually gave me a lot of comfort.
Right.
It made me feel like they were still here, and that helped out a lot.
Yeah. There was a video or description of a video or something from an investigation that I was looking at several months ago, and it kind of went into that idea too of like why something is haunting a building in the way it is, or why they're there at all. And one of the things that people talk about is like, well, why do they still go up and down and open the door and close the door? They could just go through it. But then there are those other ones where, and that's where this particular thing that I'm talking about came from, is that they were doing an investigation of this place because a spirit was always seen coming and going out of a wall, and they didn't understand why it would be doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so when they went back and researched the building and found the original blueprints from the building, where that wall is now used to actually be the bottom of a stairway. So it was taking the same route that it always took, because to them, that's where the stairway was.
Gotcha. Makes sense.
So I thought that was interesting.
It is interesting.
Because a lot of the residual haunts, people are not understanding why they're even happening. And because they're spirits that are not even interacting with you. They're just doing the same things over and over again. So that idea is more like it's sort of a recording when it's a residual like that. Residuals can also be intelligent tied, like in the case here where we hear the same things happening and stuff, but we still do get that acknowledgments of a presence, like with the whistling.
Right, because those
scents.
aren't constant.
Right.
The old Spice, or the walking up and down the halls, or the whistle, that only happens every once in a while, where the residual is definitely constantly opening and shutting of the cabinets
Right.
and all of that stuff. Yeah, absolutely.
It's just like somebody's kind of subconsciously, unconsciously going about their daily routine. Like, I'm sure we've all sort of experienced that. We do something in our house so many times on a daily basis, going to the refrigerator, getting a drink or something like that, that those residual haunts are happening like that because they're kind of in that zone.
Right.
And they're just replaying things they've done over and over again without really thinking about it, because they just got so used to doing it.
And I think that goes into like land hauntings, where say there was a home, the home was torn down, but that was a place of happiness for a person who had previously lived there. Then they build a mall on top of it, or a
Right.
restaurant, and that's how the restaurants become quote unquote haunted. It's not that something bad happened there. It's just that it's continuing to do its thing, thinking that its home is still there.
Right. Yeah, you've just basically put your building on their home, and to them it's still where their home's at.
Right.
And they're still going about it like they do in their home. So, yeah, it makes a good point, because there are lots of places where there's activity that have zero history of any sort of thing traumatic happening. It could be a newer building, things like that. That's pretty common, especially in historic areas. We were talking about that not too long ago with the Medieval Torture Museum on St. George Street down in St. Augustine. And that's a newer building. I want to say it was built in the 1990s, but it was built on, obviously, the location where buildings stood in the 1500s, 1600s. And, multiple other buildings as they were destroyed and new ones built and stuff like that over time. So the things that have been happening in the Medieval Torture Museum may have absolutely nothing to do with the building itself. It's just the location that it sits on.
Right.
So I don't know. I think we've gone about an hour now. Yeah, we're right about 30 seconds away from an hour at this point. So without just mindlessly babbling about things, I think we've covered a few interesting things. You understand where Westgate comes from. I get questions about that all the time, so that was something that we've been meaning to kind of talk about anyway. So in the end, I guess I will just do a few things. Talk about Afterlife tours again. Going to be starting the beginning of October. It's going to be the 3rd of October 2018. And right now we have the tours set to where I'm doing them an hour and a half walking tour with the history of each of the places that I take you to and the results of the investigations that we've done, as well as debunking. So you can find that on afterlifetours.net for the city of St. Augustine. And of course, they've also got their tours going in Savannah, so you'll see both options on the website. So 8 p.m. and 10:30 p.m. every day of the week except Monday and Tuesday is when I'm going to be doing those tours starting in October of this year, 2018.
Awesome. Follow us on Instagram, please. I am super active on there.
Yes.
If you like us and you're into what we do, we'll follow you back. And I respond quickly.
Yes, really quickly. Yeah, you're really active on there, and that's where we, we'll put up our art for each of these podcasts and everything too, because it seems like a lot of people have actually come to us more through Instagram than they have like through our Facebook page and stuff.
Yep.
Anyway. So, and just awesome, like the connections.
Yeah.
And, the people, for whatever reason, y'all find us interesting enough to follow.
Thank you.
Thank you, because, we obviously have been following you for a long time. So it's a huge compliment and an honor to kind of have those connections. Even, just the fact that it's just like Instagram, it's a line of communication that we all share that way. So.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Westgate Paranormal on Instagram, Westgate Paranormal on Facebook.
Yep.
If you want to send us an email, then it's westgateparanormal@gmail.com.
If you want to send us pictures that way, like of stuff that you guys have caught, we would love to see it. It would be super cool. Or tag us in your stuff on Instagram if you guys catch something cool and you want us to see it. If I haven't already liked it the minute it went up.
Yeah, we love that. We love seeing what other people have pictures of and hearing their experiences and stuff like that. That's one of the main parts of it to me.
So yeah, thank you guys for listening again, listening to us ramble on this one. We'll get back to being responsible adults and actually doing more research very, very soon.
Yeah, we really want to get the research in. We don't want to just present something thrown together when it comes to a topic like those. So thank you again for listening, and until next time, get with us on Instagram, Facebook, and take care.